Hello, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. Bear with me just a second. I'm just rolling up my sleeves over here. Gotta get prepped for Poop Wednesday. Crack open a drink as well. Gotta stay hydrated. Hope everyone is staying hydrated on the other side too. Hello, Color Coded. Hello, Zayad. Hello, Q. Hello, Sheila. Lovely to see you all here. Everyone is doing well. Crack it open. Yo. Good to go. Let's switch it on over. There we go. Hello, where do I join the server? Good question. It's in the description. So it's the first link in the description down below. Eduarda, hello. How are you doing? I am doing okay. I'm doing okay. I've been having just a normal working day, really. Yeah, so nothing too special happening. Although I have been having a lot of fun with Unreal Engine. Since, for whatever reason, the last 2 weeks I've been doing a lot of just setup and prep for the next project, which also includes, I'm basically doing this thing where the team challenge template. Yeah, Jakarta, that is correct. That will take you to the website, and there's a button on there to become a member. We are a paid community, so that's why you might be getting confused. But yeah, like I was saying, I am doing a whole bunch of just like setup for my next project. And the way that I'm kind of setting it up is that I am building a bunch of stuff that can then also be used for the team challenge as well. So I'm kind of trying to make like the best of both worlds, and I'm basically I think I've basically set up like 20 new material functions. I think a couple of new master shaders, a whole bunch of functionality. I'm setting up some BCG graphs as well. So yeah, I'm basically building like a bunch of tools that I can use on my projects, but then also for the team challenge project as well. So that really just leveling up like the tools that we give people to get started. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. And it's basically me just looking through like a bunch of other projects that are available to see what they do, how they do it, and then like seeing what we need for the team challenges. Because obviously like what we need is probably like a bit more simplified for what they have made, right? Especially if you look at some of the really advanced like Quixel shaders, for example. We don't need all that fancy stuff with like 1,000 of parameters. So yeah, we'll see. Sad is saying I was sleeping too early for the last 2 weeks, so sad I missed your streams. Oh shit, sorry. Eduardo is saying, oh nice. Yeah, so I really hope that next time. Well, I really want to level up like what we offer people, right? So I'm thinking about like expanding like the little demo area that we have where it has like all the materials, and I'm also thinking about setting up like some documentation on the website too, so that you can get used to using the tools that I've built and then seeing how I can improve them for next time, right? So kind of just using the team challenge just as like a little test bed as well to see what people are doing with the tools. And that would be cool to see. So yeah, if you, I mean, this is an open call. If you have like anything that would be like really cool to have that you think of like, oh my god, that would be amazing to have in the next team challenge, let me know, or feel free to add it in the chat as well. All shaders need 1,000 sliders or I riot. Oh my god, Connor. You say that now, and then you get a project and it's like, oh my god, I'm never going to use this. I know this. I just want to have a couple of like neat things that I can do, and then I don't need to have a material with like all the functionality. I just want the functionality that I care about. McFarlane's asking, did you see the Witcher tech demo? Yeah, I watched the whole thing. I watched the whole opening session of Unreal Fest. It was looking really good. We had a long conversation about this at work, and yeah, I do really like it. It looks really, really good. Actually, the foliage was really interesting because I was looking into like a lot of nanite foliage before I watched that talk, and it's interesting how they do it now. The voxelization though, that was a smart technique to do. Like using voxelization for like far LOD distances, that was really interesting. But yeah, the foliage, especially with nanite foliage, like that's the biggest thing, because even if you do like everything in triangles, right, you can just not rely on nanite, because at a certain point it doesn't have like any more geometry to cut, right? So that's the whole issue there. So that's why they needed to look into like voxelization to then use that for like far LOD distances and all that kind of stuff, which is really interesting. But I was listening to a talk, I think it's literally called like Nanite for Artists, where they talk about like foliage, and I think it's from GDC from last year. I was listening to that this week, and they were discussing how to create nanite. And it's interesting now that one of the optimal ways of doing it is that you don't have a full tree. You generate a tree within PCG, so you basically have like all the building blocks of your tree, right? So you have your trunk, you have your branches, and then you have like, I don't know, let's say 5 variation of branches. And then you put that into a not a speed tree, a PCG graph, and then you generate that in Unreal Engine, right? Which also means that it's going to be more optimal because now all the branches are instanced, right? So, yeah. I think they said this nanite foliage is in 5.7 or something, unless I'm mistaken. I'm not sure when they were gonna release it, since it is CD Projekt building the tech, right? And I think Unreal Engine on their own side, this is an interesting question. I don't know if they're still gonna continue the solution that they built, or if they're just gonna piggyback on the solution that CD Projekt has now built, right? Because maybe that is a thing that they've been collaborating on for the longest time, and this is just like, hey, look, this is what we do. Which kind of makes sense, right? Because I feel for the longest time, Unreal Engine was kind of struggling to really break through to like big AAA games, apart from like, you know, like Gears of War, because it's Epic Games and all that kind of stuff. And especially on the collaboration side, where even the ones that were doing it, they didn't really have that open source mindset or that sharing mindset that CD Projekt has, right? Because they have like a long legacy of yeah, just being able to like share games, and they run their own marketplace for sharing games as well, and all that kind of stuff. Hazelight Games are Unreal Engine? Yeah, exactly. But what I mean is that even if you have developers working on it, it's not like you get tech from Hazelight that you can use as a commercial person, right? Like usually what they do is they build like their own tech stack, and that is internal. So it seems like CD Projekt just has like a different way of approaching it, where they are collaborating with Unreal, and then they're just like handing it off, you know, just like, here it is. Probably not for everything, right? But yeah, it's interesting to see. But yeah. Hey David. Hey Veer. First time stopping by. Been watching on YouTube for a while. I love the vids. Oh, thank you so much, Veer. Open up a window. Because it's gonna get freaking hot in here. Yeah, the whole presentation was good. What I was gonna say though, like in the beginning, it didn't really look like The Witcher. Like I think that was my first impression, was like, wow, this looks good, but it doesn't look like The Witcher. So that was really interesting. And we had a long discussion about it, and I think it was just like how we were struggling to find like a good way of saying it, but it felt very chaotic in the way that they handle, and very noisy in the way that they handle their colors, right? Where if you look at The Witcher 3, a lot of the color palette is relatively muted, apart from the DLC, right? But a lot of it seems to be very muted, and then you have like these pops of color. Where here it's like, oh no, everything has color. So you had like the red rocks against like the blue cliffs, and then you had like green foliage, and it was just like, oh my god, it was a lot happening on the scene. Which, I don't know, it just feels like it pushes it more into the realm of, oh, like Horizon Zero Dawn kind of looks like that too. So, I don't know. That was just like my first couple of thoughts about it. Yeah, did everyone see it as well? What are your opinions? Good presentation, but I'm worried that everyone's going to use metahumans and we're going to see metahumans in games. No, everyone's going to do their own spin, right? Because the same thing can be said about just, oh, everyone's going to use like the stuff that Quixel publishes, right? The issue with that is that every game like still wants to stand out somehow, right? So they still are they're gonna take the base metahuman and then they're gonna put their own spin on it. Right? So that would be what's gonna happen here as well. And then maybe smaller developers, they're gonna have less wiggle room with that, or like less input in what they can do with it, right? So they might just use metahumans out of the box. Game simulations were really cool. Yeah, that reminded me of, oh my god, that reminded me of, was it Chaos back then as well? So in 2016, fuck's sake, in one of my student projects that I was doing, I used an NVIDIA clock modifier. I don't know what it was called back then. I cannot remember. But it was really annoying to set up, really annoying to get access to. And it was really cumbersome. And in the end, I got like a fully simulated like flag working in one of my games. Yeah, that was cool. It's so like in general, right? Like what is really cool is that the stuff that was so freaking tricky to do is now so much more approachable, right? If you just think about like the opportunities that you can have with like, oh, I'm just gonna use a metahuman, right? Like, oh, what do you mean? You don't need to have like a dedicated character artist that just builds the whole thing in a couple of months, you know? Like, oh no, you can just get it, right? It's there out of the box. Do you think it will be the end for high to low poly workflow? No, I think it still has its place for really unique stuff, right? But personally, if I were to make my own game, I would not make high to low poly stuff anymore. And then, because I've always been a huge fan of just like modularity, right? Like, and I mean modularity in the broadest sense, where I can grab materials and I can throw them in like a layer material, and then I can blend them a certain way, and now I can use those materials in different ways, and that is just like way more exciting to me than spending like, I don't know, a couple of weeks working on something that looks like really, really cool. But that does mean that if you need something that looks really unique, then you would still need to do it like high to low poly. Or yeah, you can get away sometimes, but then you're paying for it in terms of performance cost, right? So let's say you can make a gun that doesn't use like high to low poly, but that also means that you then need to layer so many materials and so many things on top of it that it almost makes no sense to have that unless you're going to be reusing it in the rest of the game, right? So then it becomes more of an asset management bottleneck rather than a creation bottleneck, if that makes sense. So you need to be way more careful about how you manage your assets and how you manage your materials and all that kind of stuff compared to high to low poly modeling. And for the most part, like from if you still work with outsource, right, and outsource is more prevalent than ever, what is definitely the easiest thing to do and the least project impacting is that you still just hand them like, hey, I want this, you make it high to low poly, and it's its own like insulated kind of thing. Because let's say you were to do your whole game only uses layered materials, then that outsource team also needs to be capable of using that in the correct way as well, which is a huge there's a huge margin for error there, right? Because if you don't train them up in your way of working, then they might use it in a different way, which then causes the whole game to not run properly anymore. So there's definitely still like it's definitely still its place, and I don't think it's going to go away like anytime soon. I think what we will see is that games will stop relying on it. But yeah. Did you see the vertex painting for LOD presentation? Not yet. No. But I've been playing around with some of that stuff myself as well. Like, because I'm diving into Nanite for the first time. There's some pretty cool stuff. Because now you can do per instance like variation already, right? But for LOD transitions, I wonder how they do that. I wonder if you even need it on like Nanite meshes, unless it's like distant buildings. Yeah, curious to check that out. Was that a separate talk? Be curious to check it out. Yeah, so for people that are new here, let me do like a quick introduction, right? So I'm a senior environment artist in the games industry myself, and this is basically my weekly time slot where I sit down with the community. We're going to be diving into a bunch of people's work in just about like 10 minutes. But if you have any questions in the meantime about game dev, environment art, anything like that, feel free to pop it in the chat. And then Veer is coming in with a question. I'm currently trying to learn high poly modeling and clean topology. Would you recommend me to learn sub-D? Well, yeah, if you're going to go for clean topology, you will probably need to learn sub-D regardless, right? Because at the core of subdivision modeling is just the way that you manage your topology in a way where you can get reliable curvature and shapes out of it, right? So that is basically at the core of it. I think the NPC stuff was super cool, but I don't know if we can expect that stuff in game. So I think some of it is definitely canned, right? As in, so it is not pre-animated or not like uniquely animated, I think. What I think is happening is that, for example, there was this beautiful moment where she bumps into a guy with a crate of apples, right? The apples drop on the floor, the kid sees it, runs up and steals an apple, right? And then you have like two pigs running after the kid to also eat from the apples, right? So that's a really cool moment. I think what happened there is that those animations and those interactions exist. And I think just to make sure that it works for like a live demo, they just like trigger them on like a certain moment, right? I think those animations and things would exist in the game. I think you just have to do the right thing at the right moment to see the effects of it happening, right? Because they're not going to be able to account for every scenario that you might run into, right? So let's say you bump into a different person that has like a crate of fish, right? Do we still expect the same thing to happen there? Or is it going to be something different, right? And the complexity just really quickly spirals out of control. But yeah, I mean, if we look back at like the older Assassin's Creed games, right? Like some of the the crowd tech that they had, where you scoot in between the crowd and you like push people out of the way, like that was in like Assassin's Creed 1 or 2, right? Of course, this is like more in depth, but I'm just saying that it's not that we couldn't do it. It's just that usually the developments are so huge, and that kind of stuff takes so much time that there's usually just not time to do it. So I'm curious to see how far that goes. Was talking about the muscle sim stuff. Yeah, the muscle sim stuff. I don't know how to feel about that. I first of all, let me caveat this. I don't know anything about animation. Let's just lay the bar really low, right? But whenever they do like the cutaway and it's like, oh my god, we're actually built like all the muscles and all that kind of stuff. Just like, no, you didn't. Like that's my first reaction, right? Like, because look at it from like a game perspective. They're not gonna have that there if they're never gonna show it off apart from a tech demo, right? So either they made that for the tech demo, which might be possible, right? Because it is a thing that maybe with a collaboration with Unreal, they could be like, hey, look, if you build this, then we'll throw you some money, right? That might be happening. So in that relationship, it could exist, but they're not gonna make something that is just used for this one tech demo and then just have it like invisible in the game, right? Unless there's like another motive there. So that was interesting to see, and I think it drives the visuals really well, but I don't think that that necessarily exists, right? It's not like you can, oh, I'm gonna throw in like a frog now, and it automatically strips away the shell and I can see the whole muscular structure. That's not how that thing works. David is saying that just happens at my work due to a lack of training in the studio's proprietary tools. We lost 2 weeks of work. Oh yeah, happens all the time. Happens all the time. I currently have a hard time with super curvy and complex shapes, so I feel like it'd be good for that as well. Yeah. Especially with high poly modeling, getting used to how to create good shapes, you'll definitely need it. Yeah, the presentation was cool. I think what is really interesting is from a business perspective. They're pulling a lot of like really interesting moves where they're just trying to attract like a whole bunch of studios to like build for their platform, right? Like whether it is like Unreal or whether it is for the Epic Game Store, right? And they're really going aggressive on that. So that was interesting to see. And then also, I don't know if anyone else caught that, but it seems like with Unreal Engine 6, they want to merge Unreal Engine for Fortnite and the actual engine together. So yeah, that was really interesting. I wonder how they're gonna do that, because that is gonna be interesting. I think it's low poly muscle mesh at runtime for IK and stuff. Then the baked high poly deformations use that data. But yeah, but what's the point of having like a muscular structure underneath it, right? Because usually, I mean, look, again, I don't know anything about animation, right? But like just looking at it, the way that that's usually done is just with like, it is done with a representation, right? But it's done through like collisions, right? So, well, in that case, it could potentially be done by like a low poly approximation of that mesh, right? But it's not like they're gonna have like the full textures and it's gonna be fully rendered and you can see the muscles move and all that kind of stuff. It is just literally gonna be a shell underneath it that then might like bump into the skin to like let it deform, right? Who knows? Again, would be cool to see. Yeah. I think what I really want to say is that I'm more talking about the actual visuals, right, that were on display. It's more like it's a sales pitch, right, rather than, oh my god, you can strip away the skin and you can see like the actual musculature underneath, right? I think the tech underneath it is really cool. Don't get me wrong. Do you think they'll go for one big world this time, or keep it safe with smaller worlds like Witcher 3? They'll probably go for one big world, right? If you look at like World Partition, like all the open world stuff that Unreal has been like really bumping up, like in the last, well, since what was it, like 5.0, right? That's when they really started to double down on like the open world aspect of it. They need a shining example for that, right? And if you can get The Witcher to be that shining example, then it's like, what's the best example there, right? So I think they will go for like a big open world, yeah. Oh, right. Hello, video game development. We're just gonna get started. So let's switch over. I try to get through the whole thing. So usually what I do before the stream, I take an hour and I literally try to look at it, get some references, all that kind of stuff. Because we have like a large amount of people today, I didn't manage to get through the whole thing, but let's say 80% of it. So let's have a look. Right. So for people that are new and are joining, feel free to ask any questions about game dev. It's at the bottom of the screen as well. So if you need to ask any questions about working in game dev, environment art, or anything else that's happening in the industry, let the people in the chat know, and then we can talk about it. Cool. So let's start out with the first one for today. First one is Artyom. Let's go. So everyone, first time sharing my post here. That is awesome. Welcome, Artyom. I'm currently working on a short horror project where a strong focus on environmental storytelling. I really appreciate your thoughts on the current layout and how it communicates the lore of the environment. So I skipped the story. So there is a section where Artyom laid out the story. I have not read that section. What I want to do is I want to see if we can find out the story by just looking at what is on the screen, right? Because that is what better illustration is there to actually look at the visuals on display and see what's happening, right? And what we can see is definitely, it's in a metro station, right? So we have like a metro station that has collapsed. And it seems like there are people hunkered down in it as well. Because we kind of have like some storage stuff happening here. And then potentially this could be like an area where people might be sleeping. But at the moment, it is hard to tell exactly what is happening, like exactly what time period we're in, or exactly what has happened, right? Like, why did the subway tunnel collapse? Or, yeah, what happened in general, right? So, yeah, I think let's make some notes for that. So, I think we get some indications of life, but I am unsure about the bigger story that's happening right now, right? So that would be the first thing to say. What I will say, if a lot of the story details are missing at this point, but I'd love to know if I'm heading in the right direction. So here's the thing, like when you say that a lot of the story details are missing currently, but I already see that you've done like a bunch of texture and material work, that has me concerned, because the story is at the core of what you do as an environment artist, right? So we need to focus on that and make sure that it is 100%, well, like not 100%, but like, let's say it's representative of the final thing, right? So we need to get the story in first before we know what we need to build, right? So it is story first, and from that story, everything else flows out of it. So if at this point I don't know what the story is yet, that will be something to figure out, and then build an area that you can showcase. Second thing that I will say here is the scene looks really big, right? And that's where the story comes in again. You can tell a story with just a singular screenshot. And that's what I want you to focus on first, because anything additional, like let's say this corridor, we don't need it. This shot is purely an additional shot. And you only do those when you have your other shots figured out. The reason why is also because getting all this to look really good takes a lot of time, right? Especially if you want to do everything yourself, you want to become an environment artist, you want to showcase all the skills that you have. So I want you to focus on smaller areas and make them stand out more. So in this case, like this shot could be a perfect example where we have something of, let's do some separation, right? So let's say this is the workshop or work and storage. Cool. And then this is maybe sleep/leisure, right? So that means that we have a differentiation between those two areas now, where one is where they're maybe preparing to go outside. I'm keeping it very vague because I don't know what we're in right now, right? Like what the time period is or anything like that. But maybe that's where they're prepared to go outside. Maybe that's where they're doing something. Maybe that's where they're just preparing something, right? And they have storage there. And what this is going to do is that we can designate certain areas and we can give them their own mini stories, right? So we have the overarching story, and then we can split that off into mini stories that can basically stand by themselves, right? Because with this one, we can have like a bunch of posters from like his wife and kids that he's missing. There's like a sleeping bag on the floor, right? And there's like I don't know, some personal stuff on the floor here. And then here we can kind of get a glimpse of what he's trying to do to survive, right? So this is more like why he's trying to survive. And this is how he's trying to survive, right? So think about those things. Second question here is lighting for the area separation. Is it effective? So this kind of goes into my previous comment where, first of all, let's focus on a smaller area and then think about like how we're going to light stuff up, right? Because for example, right now we have a bunch of lights. For example, here, this has collapsed. Why is there light inside of this, right? Because there's nothing of interest going to happen here, right? From like a visual perspective, right? So that is something that if there's nothing of interest that's going to happen, it's fine to not put a light in there. Same here. We're drawing the attention to the tunnel, but there's nothing interesting happening in the tunnel, right? So it's fine. What could be cool is just you have this like light coming down from the top. I think that works because that gives us an indication of like, oh, there's still like something happening on the surface, right? But yeah, you really want to make sure that you figure out the story first. I know, see, we're going back constantly, right? So story, and from that we can decide our focus points. It gives us an area to focus. So that's what I try to do here, right? So now, this is the area where he wants to survive. This is the area where he's sleeping, right? That means that this train, probably don't need it. This stuff in the back, we can probably turn that down, right? We can make it very subtle. And then do the same thing here as well. So we have just like a subtle light coming in from like both ends. Because what we try to do is we're not trying to pull the attention to those areas, but we still want to give some sort of like depth to the scene. Depth in the scene as in that there is more to it than just this one hallway, right? So keep those two subtle and then pick where you want to focus most, right? So I would say, because my interpretation of the story is that I want to show a lot of personality in this little section. And then this is more like additional context, right? So that means that we have a hierarchy that is coming from our story, that we can then translate into a scene. So let me do like a quick little exercise here. So if we decide to take this guy, actually, let's go for this one here. We'll take the one on the right. Just gonna duplicate it. That means that we are gonna go for... Right, so I'm just gonna kill all this stuff. We don't really need that. I'm gonna make that way more subtle. I'm even gonna make this like more subtle. Right? And then we can do the inverse here as well. But what this does is it gives us a better focus point, right? Because right now, everything is the same, like in your version, everything is the same sort of intensity, where what I try to do is I try to infuse a hierarchy into the scene through the lighting by itself, right? Because I'm trying to decide like, okay, here's where I want it to look first, and then probably go to like the second area in the back, which we could then like brighten up a little bit more. And then I would honestly just get rid of the whole lights down here as well. Right? So that's the way, and you can see like everything kind of flows from the story, right? Like the story starts where like, okay, what is important to the story? What am I trying to say? And then you go from there. Everything kind of sprawls out from there. That doesn't mean that the story needs to be like something like super complex, right? It can literally be like, hey, this is my own version of Metro, like surviving in a metro, right? But this is not set in Russia. This is set in Paris. Cool. That's it. Nice. Okay. So yeah, and that kind of like it wrapped your third question in there as well, because your third question was any tips on lighting such a big space. We tried to keep it to 2 questions as well, but I kind of managed to kind of like wrap it in there. So it comes down to hierarchy, right? So yeah, best of luck. I would really focus on a smaller area and really think about the story, and then think about like how you can translate that story into 3D, right? But keep it small, keep it manageable, and focus on detail rather than scale and scope. Because you don't need a giant scene to make a cool story. But yeah, thank you so much, Artyom. Artyom, sorry. Really cool work though. Great start. You know, we're early in the game. You've built like a bunch of cool stuff already. And let's see, right? Like, oh yeah, let me actually have a look at the lore. So, a group of people got trapped in the subway and tried to survive. They used whatever they could find to build spaces for their basic needs, like a medical area, storage corner, and a small memorial on the info board, and a place to sleep. Okay, cool. So I would condense that all down into a singular area and make it more impactful, because all the story is in that singular area rather than spread out across multiple things that we can't really see, right? Be creative with that one little area that you have. Yeah. Super cool work. Thank you so much for sharing it. And yeah, welcome to the community as well. Lovely to have you. Let's see. Yeah, I promised that we were gonna go random, right? So let me see. Let's start actually with some of the new people here. So I think Lily is also new. I've not seen, or it's been a while since I've seen any of your work. But let's see, there was a question in the chat too. So do you think it's a good idea to start as a hard surface artist for outsourcing studios and then transition later for environment art? No, I don't think so. I mean, it could be a way to do it, but they are like completely different things that you have to do, right? So if you want to become an environment artist, um, see, so here's an issue that I have with that statement, right? So I want to become an environment artist, but maybe it is faster for me to get a job in the video games industry if I start as a 3D hard surface artist or outsourcing studios. I would never focus on what is faster. I would focus on whatever you're really interested in. And if you like making vehicles, do a couple of vehicles and then get back to me, and then we can talk about it, because they are complex, really complex. But hey, that doesn't mean that you can't like it, right? But I would never focus on, so this is always a difficult one, right? Because there are realities, right? So let's say you live in a country that doesn't have, they only have outsourced studios, right? That does mean that that you need to somehow get in, right? You can't combine vehicles and environments. No, they're two, like they're two massive things that require its own focus. Like it's almost like saying, can you do like characters and environment art like at the same time? Right? It's the same thing. They're so vastly different that it's going to be really difficult to get good at either one, because both of them are really, really complex in their own right. That it's better to focus on one, really dedicate yourself to it, and get that job through that, right? So if you are really passionate about like environment art and you want to get in that way, then that will be the thing to focus on. But the only way that you know that is by trying out like a bunch of different things, right? So that would be a good thing to try first. That's what I had to do as well. Look at me, Mr. Concept Artist, getting into uni and then discovering 3D, and now we're here, you know? Oh, that is really simple. If you need a job and money, get any job that you can. A lot of people are in that same position. There's nothing wrong with just getting any job. I had a bunch of different jobs before. I did a bunch of jobs as like a student, like, yeah, whatever you need to do to get money. If that is the thing, I would honestly just get the job. Get the job and then do after work. Yeah, it was good. So you have a job already. But yeah, I think in general, yeah, you need to, there's a prioritization that needs to happen, right? If it is like, hey, I am not getting by with my current job, then it might just mean that you need to just look for like a different job or something else that earns you more money in the meantime, and then build your way up. I would never advise someone that is really concerned about getting by to then drop their current job and do the game art thing. It is really competitive, especially now. It is more competitive than it's ever been. And especially if you live in a country, then in a country that doesn't have like a big games industry, it's going to be really difficult because you're competing with basically the whole world at that point, right? Not that it's not doable, but I'm just saying that it's more sustainable doing it that way. Like P is saying, just ask for a friend, will there be any more portfolio reviews coming up? No, actually we stopped doing those portfolio reviews because they were just most of the same. So what I do want to do is I want to make a video where I basically compile like all my portfolio tips and then just have that video out there. But I still need to get started on that. Time to do portfolio roasts? No, honestly, like people get roasted enough already by just the freaking hiring wall that they run into. Like Stranger's saying, right? It's damn near impossible. I've been looking for a game art job for the last 3 years since I graduated uni. Not even one interview. Yeah, it is. It is tough. It is tough. You have to, yeah. It's a combination of being really good at what you do, being on time, and being in the right place. So like one thing you can control and two things that you're just hoping for that work out. So yeah, it's a big gamble. But yeah, I'm sure like if you really dedicate yourself to it and you surround yourself with people that are trying to do the same, or you get into communities and you just consistently level up, like I think anyone can make it. I would say like 99% can make it. Let's see. What would be a really great portfolio for environment art? Storytelling. So it's a combination of all the above. I mean, props and assets, they're kind of the same thing, right? So it's you have to know the workflows for environment art, but if you're starting in the beginning, you start with a singular prop and then build your way up to multiple props and then tell a little story with those props and then build bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, not too big. There's definitely like a curve, like a drop off somewhere. Let's see. So Lily, to get back into the feedback here, Lily is asking a question to hope to get some feedback on the lighting and the composition for this piece. Maybe some advice on how to tackle environments without any concept art. The last thing is a very broad question. Some advice to tackle environments without concept art. So basically, in short, no concept, you need a ton of references. That's basically what it comes down to. Our oldest workshop that we did with Johan William Loeffler basically talks about this. It is a really long one, but he basically talks about like if you don't have a concept, like how to build one yourself. So go check that out. It is the first workshop that is on our YouTube. That would be good to check out there. Getting back to the other questions. So lighting and composition, right? I kind of did some stuff here already. When it comes to the composition, right? If we are trying to have the person look here, then we can employ like a couple of things here, right? First thing that I would do is I would look at the areas that pull the most attention towards themselves and have the most contrast, right? So that's why this area here is highlighted, because it stands out so much because it is a very dark color with a white color in the middle. What I would do is I would move this area. I would honestly just transpose that here. So that means that we get that same sort of effect, but we're doing it here instead. Because if you look at like a guiding line, right? Like that's what we want to achieve. We want a player to look here. And then if we get rid of like all the white here, we can still have that path here at the back. Maybe we just slim it down a little bit, right? So that it's not as prominent as the one in the foreground. But we can still have that. We just need to be careful how we add that path to it. So in short, we want to lessen the importance of the stuff that is distracting to... Well, we want to lessen the importance of all the elements in our scene that are distracting us from the main focal point, right? Like the cat statue. I think you've already done a good job by having something man-made, surrounded by something that is natural, right? That always works really well. We already have color contrast, which works really well as well. You have a lot of colors happening there. And then maybe what you didn't notice, or maybe you noticed it, is that I did some trickery as well. So this is the way that it was looking before my overpaint. Well, overpaint. I just did some like slight additions to it, right? And you can kind of see what I tried to do. So I did a bad job at doing a vignette, but a vignette is pulling us more towards the center of the image, right? So that is like step one. Let's see. Oh, did I? Oh, no. I can do it here. So that to the side. So you can kind of see what that is doing, right? So that is basically a vignette here. You can do a way better job at that. You can do it two ways. So Connor is basically saying that the second way that I would suggest it. The first way is the way that I did it. It's like a screen spaced effect, and that will just pull you into the middle. We can also do a natural vignette where you just have like more stuff in the foreground. So basically this, I would move that like more to the foreground so that we have like a bigger shape that is kind of blocking us from like getting distracted by like some of this stuff. Basically moving that whole shape forward and then doing the same thing here as well, where you have some sort of shape that is kind of blocking you. And then we can do the same thing here as well. It's like in the background, we have some of these like harder shapes. We need to fill some of them out as well. Where maybe we have some like more trees in the background. Because we're basically trying to block things off in the distance to kind of focus you more towards the cat on the right. And right now, that really harsh silhouette here is both distracting, and it's not really helpful to giving the impression that this is like a whole world, right? It seems like the world ends there. So we need to get some trees in there to sell that impression. And then yeah, the lighting, that's basically the overpaint that I did here. So if we turn the inner shadow back on, what I did here was, can I disable this somehow? Probably not. I accentuated this little area. Obviously, I faked it, but you can do the same thing by just having like a light that is specifically shining on that little area. Keep it very subtle though, because keep it very subtle and probably disable shadow casting, because we don't want to draw like additional attention to it by adding contrast, right? We don't want light and dark. We only want light. That's why we disable shadow casting. Let me think. So yeah, what I was saying is that you want to be careful with how intense you make this, because it can become very apparent that you can tell it's a fake light, right? So it needs to be done very subtly. Yeah. And there's definitely some more stuff that you can do when it comes to the lighting, right? I think just playing around with probably something that feels like a little bit more cheerful, upbeat, because it feels like that is the way that you're constructing the scene, but the lighting itself feels like very moody and very dark, and it's almost like the beginning of nighttime or like a cloudy night or something like that. And that might work, but I would lean into the fantasy that you're trying to sell, right? If it's a very colorful world, I would potentially think about, I don't know, maybe going with a always trying something with the golden hour, right? Which is basically in the morning when the sun is rising or when the sun is going down. Those are like two areas of the golden hour. That would be something to try out as well. Yeah. Be careful about the colors though. That's what I would say. I think, yeah, it would be nice to give it a try, but generally you kind of want to have a contrast between all these colorful lights and then having something that's not colorful for the rest of it. So yeah, give that a try. But definitely all the other things are going to help a lot as well. So cool. Thank you for sharing your work, Lily. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. Yeah, cool stuff. And thank you for sharing your work. Let's see. Jack Roy is coming in and asking a question. Hello, Jack Roy. As a beginner, would it be better to start my portfolio with props and game assets and then build it into a small scene like a diorama? Or should I just become really good first and make multiple big scenes? Man, I'm gonna when you mean become really good first, we're talking about like half a decade of work. Right? I mean, you can definitely get there quicker, but that is a lot of work. In the beginning, what I would do is exactly like you said. Start small and build up from there, right? Not everything needs to be put on your portfolio. That's also something that people seem to forget, is that it is fine to just do a bunch of tests, right? Just like, hey, I'm intrigued by this technique. I'm going to try it and do a quick test. And it's like, okay, I learned something there. I'm going to put that in my back pocket and I'm going to use that somewhere in the future, right? But yeah, definitely start small and then build up. Like you can't even do it. You can't even do it. What is the word that I'm looking for? Like you can't even execute on it properly because, okay, what happens is that if you try to go really big in the beginning and you don't really have like all the skill sets to make it consistent, is that you will learn so much through the development of that project that by the time that you get to the middle, you have to redo all the stuff that you did in the beginning. And that is a vicious cycle. That is just, it's not endless, but it swallows people whole and it destroys projects, right? So you don't want to get into that cycle. You just want to keep it small and keep it simple so that you can finish it. And then it's the same thing, Jack Roy. Like, would it be bad to make two portfolios, one for environment, another one for prop art? Start with prop art first and then build your way up to environments. At that point, if you are at a stage where you can make full environments and you can make them look really, really good, it is not really a question of whether you can do props or not. It is whether you want to do props or not, if that makes sense. Your portfolio is basically letting people know, like, hey, this is what I'm excited about. It should be a showcase of what you want to do, not what you want to be available for, right? That is always going to stand out more than trying to be a jack of all trades and just trying to do a bunch of stuff, right? Because I don't even think that you need to make like a separate portfolio for environment and prop art. I would have one thing shine more than the other, right? Whichever you're into. Because if you look at the industry, right, you're not going to be hired for those two positions at the same time. Like you either do environment art or you do prop art. So, and that's also what recruiters are looking for. They're not going to hire you for both. They're going to hire you for either or. Right? You can also put that stuff that is not that good for the portfolio into your social media accounts. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way of thinking about it. That's a really good way of thinking about it. Like, I generally am a big advocate of using social media to just like spread the word, right? I was really active when I was trying to get in. It wasn't social media back then. I mean, fuck, it sounds so old. It was mostly forums and Facebook at that point, and that helped me a lot. It got me featured in a couple of places. It got me talking to a lot of really cool people. So that is a good way of making use of that, for sure. I like making vehicles and weapons. Do you think there are a lot of jobs in outsourcing studios for 3D hard surface artists? I'm not sure actually. I have no clue. For weapon artists specifically, I have no clue, honestly. That is not something that I'm too hooked into. I do know a couple of studios that do it. Like, they specialize in weapons. War Dogs being one of them, for example. But I don't know if they have openings. I have no idea. Or even what the state of that is. It's a good question. I just don't have the answer to it. Would you say there's more job availability for an environment artist? Yeah, I think so. Just in terms of sheer numbers, yes. And I'm being specific here, right? Job availability. So I think there are more job available for environment artists because you need more of them on a project, right? If you think about an open world project, you need to have a lot of environment artists compared to prop artists, right? Well, especially in-house. What happens is usually you have a lot of environment artists in-house, and then you have a lot of outsourced artists that are just working their way on like individual assets. So it's just two different things. If I would give a recommendation and you have an interest in props, I would try to just go for an outsourcing studio because you get so much more experience than you ever do like in-house, because you get to switch projects. Like if you work in-house for a studio, you're working on projects that are gonna last for a couple of years at least. So yeah. You only have 3 softwares that I use to make environments. I hope it's good enough. It's not about the tools, it's about the execution that you do with the tools. Can you work only remotely for outsourcing studios? Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. I think remote work, especially if you're talking about like out of country remote work, is becoming less and less likely. There's a couple of companies that are doing it, right? And they will probably keep doing it in the future, but it's highly unlikely that the whole industry is basically trending backwards, right? Like it's either hybrid, which means that you still need to move to the location, even though you don't need to be in a full week. But yeah, it depends. Some of them might be. I live in a place where there's no video games industry, so I don't know what to do. I mean, it's pretty simple. You kind of have to do what I did. You just move. Yeah. It's I'm from Belgium, right? Like the only place that we have now is Larian Studios, right? And the rest of it is just, it's non-approachable. And back when I was getting into the industry, like Larian Studios wasn't even known, right? So I know what you feel. Yeah, you just have to move. That means that, yeah, you're competing on like an international level now, right? Hi Tim, is there a need for underwater environments? As a person, I'm in love with this kind of nature. Would it look bad to have an underwater scene, a coastal scene, and a swamp scene in a portfolio? I mean, it's an interesting niche. I don't think it's gonna hurt, because I mean, it's highly unlikely that you will be working on an underwater environment specifically, right? Because not a lot of games do underwater, if you really think about it, right? So it's highly unlikely that you will be working on a professional environment relatively soon, potentially, unless it's like an indie space. That being said, even if you're gonna make like underwater scenes, coastal scenes, and swamp scenes, for example, you still have all the skills that you need to make cool looking scenes, right? You still need storytelling, you still need assets, you still need blah 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 blah. You're still making all of it. So it doesn't really matter at that point if your interest is really like underwater or coastal or swamp. you're gonna be able to like showcase through your interpretation that you can still just execute on the job, right? And then if you get close to being to work within an underwater scene, that's just a bonus. Okay, we're gonna jump into some feedback in just a minute here. Let me answer this last question from Jack. Feel free to keep asking those questions. I might just need to jump into some feedback. So, if they find my portfolio great, but find out I live in a foreign country, will they not consider me? Like, will they help me relocate to their country if my portfolio is really amazing? Look, if your portfolio is really amazing, they will move heaven and earth to have you there. Right? If you are like a unicorn when it comes to talent, like they will do anything. Right? If they really want to do that, for sure. There's a whole bunch of factors that come into play though. Like visa is a huge consideration, right? So that does mean that a company will need to sponsor you for your visa when you do relocate to that company, to that place, which is highly unlikely for a junior. Yeah, so it is highly unlikely for the junior. It's not impossible. I mean, I've worked with people that are juniors in their first job and they also had to move country. It just depends on where you're coming from and where you want to go and all that kind of stuff. So it's very specific. What does that unicorn look like then? I mean, there are some people that... Okay, I'll give you an example. Have you ever seen those people that are like 16 years old and they already make like better work than I do and you do? Like those people. Those are the people that like companies will probably move like heaven and earth for. You know? Those people. I need more dedicated underwater artists in games. I explore the whole game usually and I'm sick of empty oceans. Maybe he won't be... Yeah, that's true. Like usually it's just like an afterthought, right? All right, let's go into the feedback. Let's see. Where is Route 1's? Hey Tim, for the blending, I meant like get the bricks to blend with the acid to make it look good. Also the blue color, I mean with the acids. I just want to clarify. Sorry to explain it like that. No worries about it. So for the blending in general, right? Like, let me get your Discord thread up. Should I go with brick or keep it as plaster? I like the two images. I noticed that the brick material looks quite flat. Well, also, Route 1, come on. You asked like one question, but then you hide like 5 more questions in it. Come on. So let's keep it relatively simple. So I condensed it down, right? So bricks or plaster and how to blend it, right? I added like a couple of screenshots here. These are like reference pictures that I took like when we were in Greece. If you think that the stones look too flat, look at some of these stones. Look at how cool they look. Like look at these little cracks and little squiggles and like all that kind of stuff that's happening, right? Like that is basically that is what the job of an environment artist or any artist kind of comes down to, right? You listen to that intuition and you say like, hey, look, this wall looks really flat. Let me look at what I can do to solve that issue, right? Because it is a visual issue that we have to solve. And then you just look at some references, right? Because you can still do a wall like this, but then, maybe it's too flat. Okay, cool. Then we just take a wall like this, right? This is literally just the opposite side of the building. So that would be the way to go about that. I think the bricks, well, or like the stonework is probably more interesting. I would definitely watch out with the grout, right? So like how big the grout is. That's the first thing that I would pay attention to. Because you can see that like it's very subtle if you have them aligned like that, right? And also, I think this is your texture that you did. This feels like more traditional brickwork. And then some of your references are just like way too modern as well. So I would really look at where you're taking inspiration from and look at the most authentic places that you can find, right? Because, for example, what that does is these are made from a different material, right? So that's why you see that the colors look differently. Which then means that it's going to change your whole scene, right? Because all of this has like a nice sandstone kind of color, right? Which is kind of like really stereotypical about like these sort of environments. So that's where that comes from, because it's like a local stone, right? Like it's local material that they then use to build buildings with. Cool. And then the second question was, oh no, wait, before we go to that, blending. You're talking about material IDs and all that kind of stuff. I would keep it really simple. I would just use vertex painting, right? Just give your walls like a couple of edges and then just slap like a vertex paint shader on it. That's it. Like, it is as simple as it can get. And it's really simple to set up as well. Like, it's most of the time, well, it's 3 nodes to blend like materials together, right? And then if you want to get fancy, you can add like a 4th node, which then adds like a height map into it. But Unreal literally has like a function for it. It's called height lerp. So it's just blending between the two based on a height map. So I would definitely do that. And then you can get fancy with like adding vertex paint and all that kind of stuff in there. But that usually doesn't take too long to set up, and it's going to be at the core of how you blend stuff in the future as well. So it would be good to learn regardless. So yeah, vertex painting, that's what I would look at, because it's going to be, dude, it's going to be so useful on any surface that you're going to have. Second question. So I experimented with different color tones like blues and reds, which draw the main focus away and don't feel natural. Right now, I'm moving towards orange and brown color palette. Do you think I should stick with that, or is it better to introduce different colors without pulling too much attention away from the main focus? So at this point, the question that I have is, first of all, right? What's the main focus? Where are we supposed to be looking? Because, I mean, you have this whole front room in view, right? And it kind of feels like we're allowed to explore this room. Which can work. I don't necessarily think that like every scene needs to have like, oh my god, this needs to be the thing you focus on. Because if it is like the thing in the back, then it's so shoved into like the back area that it's not really serving as the main focal point right now. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. That's just something to think about. And then when it comes to the materials and the colors, right? I would look into, I circled this little area here where you can tell that this is also sunset, you know? So it's gonna be very red, very orange. But what I wanted to highlight is that you can see this little strip here. We can kind of see some like blue influences come in, right? So usually when you have like a very saturated, like very orange kind of looking scene, what we then do is we try to put contrast in the shadows by infusing more blue into those areas, right? And that can be done in post-processing by just doing like some color correction, infusing some blue into it. You can kind of see the same thing happening here where the whole scene is like very red and orange, but you still have like some of those like blues coming in and mixing in, creating like a purple kind of tone, right? So you can tell, like you can get that like red global illumination and then infuse some of those like blue shadows in it. So yeah, that's what I would do. So that's also what I said here. And then yeah, look at the example. Because yeah, thing is, the majority of your scene is just gonna be especially for an interior, it's gonna be the colors of your materials, right? The materials are the color of your scene in this case. So that means that if you're gonna have these like sandstone kind of walls, whatever the light's gonna come in is gonna have some of that color infused into it, right? So your scene is always gonna end up being like warm, unless we then skew it with like post-processing, right? So that's what I would do. Infuse some of that blue into the shadows. And that should give you some like nice little bit of color contrast. All right, cool. Thanks for sharing your work, right one? And yeah, looking good, looking good. So keep it up. And I'll see you next week. Let's move over to Swan. The Swan, you added like a shit ton of images. What is happening in these images? Okay, let's have a look. Made a copy of my original lighting and fog and tweaked it. I think we're getting closer. I softened up the shadows, edited the post-processing to have some blue in the shadows, and added a bit more orange to my main light. Okay. I think, no, it's all good, Swan. It's just, there were so many of them. And the way that I get them is they just get added to a folder on my server, right? So I just see like a stack of the same images and I'm just like, which image do I pick? Let's have a look. So I'll look at some of the differences. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see now. Yeah, this is the thing that I was missing because I wasn't really looking closely at those images, right? But let me just showcase it for the people that are here as well. Is that literally the same one? What am I doing? Yeah, there we go. Okay. So just to make it visible, this is the new one, right? So we have soft shadows, we have some like blues. Would it help if we rename our files? Oh, no, I automatically rename them when it comes into the folder, so that's all good. At least that's not an issue. That was an issue before. But yeah, we can see here, we're getting some of that like nice purpley bluish like tint happening in the shadows, right? Which is starting to look really, really good. I do feel that just the main light might be like too saturated. Right, because if you think about like the God rays coming in, the God rays are still coming in like quite high. Remember that like the light is still coming from the sun, right? So even at this point, it kind of feels like it's pretty high up, which means that the saturation of the sun shouldn't be as intense as it is at this time of day, right? So basically it comes down to two choices. You either rotate the God rays down potentially, or you lessen the saturation on your light, right? Yeah, if you see, yeah, they're slightly misaligned, the God rays, so kind of keeping them in the same line. Connor says, punchy contrast, always love it. Hell yeah. Yeah, that was just a little contrast between the two. Let me actually keep the... Fuck, which one is it? Oh, there we go. That's the one. That's the one I want. Cool. Okay, let's see. We have the questions here. So I was hoping to get more feedback regarding to my lighting. Okay. Yeah, so I think in terms of lighting, like I already said, like the God rays can help there. Maybe looking at like the saturation of like your directional light. That could potentially help as well. Because also like what we want to do is we me actually try this, right? So if I try to do like a really hacky job, what are we gonna do? Is that it? I think so. Let's have a quick test here. Yeah, okay. So let me show you what I mean. Right? So if we're gonna pull the saturation just down a little bit. Because what we ideally want to do is we still want to have some sort of contrast between our scene overall and then where we want to direct the people towards, right? And the way that I would do that is by making the interior of this little area stand out more. And that is also going to work well with like desaturation, right? And then if we then add this here, maybe try some trickery again. Go away. Let's see. What can we do? What can we do? It looks so weird for a second. Because the mask is not 100% correct, but we'll survive. There we go. That's what I needed. Okay, we're gonna do like a really hacky job here. Love. You could kind of have something like this happening, right? Where the saturation, I mean, this is a tad too much, but just in terms of contrast, that we're still being pulled into the actual cave, and that the rest is like a little bit more desaturated. I think something like that could potentially work as well. Because if we can compare the two, right? You will see that this is like pretty uniform in terms of like colors. Whereas in here, we're getting like a little bit more separation again, which is going in the right direction. Even though I feel that the saturation that we have now over here, it's a bit too intense, right? But I feel like you can get around that with just using like a nice soft light and do some lighting inside of Unreal Engine. I think that's gonna look good. Right. And then the second question, I haven't been using Nanite for this project. At least I don't think I have. Should I be using it? Otherwise, should I showcase that I can make an environment without it yet? I'm not sure what the best move is. Yeah, so that's a good question. I think overall, my current stance on it is that even though we're slowly seeing more and more adoption, and the tech is becoming like more and more popular, it is still a huge benefit of actually knowing how to fundamentally make assets the old school way, because that is going to help even create like more optimized Nanite assets as well. Because everyone, well, the main assumption, and also partly the way that Unreal Engine sold it, is that they said like, oh no, you can just slap anything in and it's going to take care of it. That's not the case though. We still need to be very careful of specific things. For example, long triangles or anything that might generate like big clusters is still gonna fuck up like Nanite. So we need to still alter our asset in a certain way so that they're appropriate for Nanite later. Okay? So I would stick with the traditional approach. I would not be worried about it. I would definitely, what I would definitely do is look into some areas where the texture is just not enough to sell the effect that you're going for. An example could be here, right? So we have this little area here where you have like a bunch of these stones. They just don't look good when we're looking at it from like such a low angle. So this needs, it needs either like geometry, right? Like actual geometry needs to be added there, or it needs some sort of an effect like parallax occlusion mapping, pixel depth offset, like something like that, right? It just needs one of the following. An easy one to do here would be geometry, right? Because you basically just like scatter like a bunch of rocks. And especially effective is where you can see the silhouette of the rocks. So let's say you scatter like a bunch of pebbles here. Just where areas where it kind of breaks up the silhouette is going to help a lot with sell the illusion that the whole terrain is going to be like these rocks, right? So I'm not saying that like all these rocks that you see here need to be replaced. We are going for selling the illusion that most of those rocks are actually more detailed than they are, right? So with a couple of clusters of rocks, like little pebbles here and there, especially around like areas like this, usually the way that this happens is, let's say we're looking top down, right? You just have like these like meshes that just have like a cluster of pebbles in them, and that's the stuff that you put down here, right, for the blending. So once you have like a couple of those clusters, then you can start scattering them around. Again, really going to be helpful around these areas, right, just to break up that silhouette a little bit more. That's going to be beautiful. Oh, I love those footsteps, by the way. Nice. Those came out like really nice. So yeah, that's what I would do. Like pick. This is basically what game desk comes down to, right? It's smoke and mirrors. We're trying to sell the effect while not doing the effect, right? So just having a couple of clusters with a couple of pebbles, that is gonna help a lot in sell the idea that the terrain is actually way more detailed than it is. Photo scan my feet for them. Okay, wait. Hold up. Let me just do this, right? Cool. Nice. Okay, yeah, thank you for that comment. It's forever on the feedback board now, so enjoy that one. This is AI made. Immediately the AI excuse. How dare you? No, it's forever here now. We got proof. Swan Boy's feet. Cool. No, great stuff though. Great stuff. Yeah, that's just like a general comment about Nanite. I think, yeah, keep making stuff like it's not Nanite yet. And then once you have a good grasp of like traditional workflows, then you can switch over to Nanite, right? Because yeah, it is becoming more and more prominent. And even in-house studios have their own variation on the tech as well, so. All right, next one, Saeem. We're gonna blast through a couple of these, so let's see. I made some notes here for Saeem specifically. So first one is the lighting. You have a beautiful concept art piece. I would say use that as a guide. So what we can see here is that you have like a lot of contrast. Like this is a very intense space and like everything is kind of just like pointing downwards, right? Where if we compare that here, again, it's not as strong as you want it to be, right? Like you kind of want that like punchy like contrast that we really know like, hey, this is the focal point. So let's have a look. That's this guy. Again, a couple of little tweaks here. So we want to make this stand out more. Cool. Let's increase this light. Nice. Did I save it? Yep, I did. I'm smart for once. Let's go. And then we do the inverse on all the stuff that we don't need to see. Okay. And especially some of like the really dark, like the really light areas. We can definitely start like reducing most of it. Oh, hold up. I was distracted. Right, and then also just doing a little trickery here. So let's get my really shitty looking vignette on there. Right, vignette. Spoiler alert! Shit. Sorry, Adam. Please forgive me. Cool. So you can already tell. Maybe it's a little bit too much. I would probably still keep some of the areas below it. But now what we could do... Yeah, we do some sort of balancing, right? So... I'm getting carried away again. Why can I not? Never mind. Never mind. So yeah, just a bit more contrast. Like this allows us to just really hone in on like the main focal point, right? That's where we're looking. That's going to be cool. Also, what could be really interesting to experiment with is wherever you have these eyes, look into some bloom so that we get like this very ominous look. That could be really, really cool. Let's see. So yeah, that's just like we're trying to kind of bring it in line, even though you've done like a different spin on the formula, right? We can kind of keep the same core, the core idea behind it. Next up, for some further improvements to the scene, if you want to finish the scene ASAP, that already sounds like you're done with the scene, right? And done, I mean like mentally. So at this point, I would just really see what you can squeeze out of it. That doesn't take too much time. So polishing up your lighting, right? Basically the stuff that we just done. Looking into post-processing, seeing what you can squeeze out of it. I would not look into any additional assets. Because you said that you were planning to make a few more props at the sides with a stamp that says something like "to be discarded." I don't think you need that. I think just honing in on like this weird cultish vibe is what you want to do, rather than making it feel like, oh look, they take the robot and then they discard the robot, right? It feels just a little bit too straightforward. I feel like keeping the mystery and keeping the intrigue is what you want to do with a scene like this. And then especially decide what means finish for you. So I added this one here because you're going to have to decide for yourself what finished means. Yeah, because at a certain point, you will have to just be like, hey, look, I'm done. I can keep working on this because we always can. But at a certain point, you just need to be like, hey, look, I'm just going to leave it like this. And I'm going to take all the lessons that I learned and do it in the next one. Right? So yeah. Thank you so much for posting your work, Zim. Best of luck. And yeah, keep us in the loop if you're going to post it. Oh my god, I destroyed this whole thing. Let's see. Who are we going to do next then? Might as well do the ones that I annotated, right? Because they're probably going to be a little bit quicker. So let's go and have a look at Adam. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the scattering above. And if there's any general feedback on the scene as a whole, anything that feels off or missing, and also wondering on the ice cliffs. So yeah, the ice cliffs, let's keep that for just a little bit, right? Hey, color coded, no worries. Thanks so much for sharing your work as well. Really appreciate it. I think the scattering of the assets looks good. Yeah, nothing really to say there. It's just currently it feels like very repetitive, right? Maybe it feels, I want to say it feels somewhat generic, as in I'm not really getting I'm not really getting a consistent feel from, well, like, let me backtrack. I think what I'm trying to say is that I see this kind of sale and I'm not expecting these kind of assets. Those assets feel like pretty modern, right? Especially like these like folded crate kind of things compared to the sale that I'm seeing here. So me, there might be like a disconnect. I know that we kind of deviated from it, but yeah. And it might just really be just that like very modern looking like cloth kind of sticky that I'm seeing here. And when it comes to the scattering, I was also thinking like maybe we can do something as like a secondary focal point by just having something happen here, right? Because it does kind of blend into the scene at this point. Because the cliffs and the rocks and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of stuff happening. And it's kind of hard to tell from a distance, like if there's anything there, right? If I disable anything, the only thing that's going to stand out is the green cases. But I wonder if we can do something different with them. Or maybe we just need to go like a little bit more bulky and a little bit more bold with the shapes again. Because I know that you had a lot of very bold shapes in the beginning, right? Like almost like rib cages and stuff. Where that kind of felt, it almost kind of felt like a romantic interpretation of what a shipwreck could be. And like a romantic as in like the romanticism period, you know? Where like everything is kind of like exaggerated and very emotionally driven. So yeah, those are just my thoughts there. And then on the ice cliff, I personally feel that they feel like really out of place because I would then expect to see like more snow and ice in the rest of the scene as well, which I don't know, maybe you could do or maybe you want to do. It just felt like, I don't know, felt like this weird little contradiction that was happening with the rest of the scene at the current state, right? And it might be like you said, maybe the transition is too sudden. Because what you could do like basically it comes down to keep and embed, right? So or remove, right? Like those are the options. And with embed, I mean, okay, if I want to have like snow stuff, then I would probably expect to see like little sheets of like ice floating about like every now and again, which is going to be horrendous. Because then you also, or well, you have to be very picky with where you put them because you don't want the disconnect of like the floating water to be noticeable with the ice sheets, right? It could be cool. It could give the whole scene like a unique twist, but that does mean that you have to spend a bunch more time, right? And then obviously I'm kind of expecting to see like at least like a layer of snow on like some surfaces. I don't think it needs to be all the surfaces, but definitely just like an indication of like, oh, this is definitely snowy territory. Then I need an ice shader too. I know. I'm opening a can of worms, right? So you need an ice shader, you need like snow, you need like a snow shader, you need all that kind of stuff now. The can of worms, it's opening. It's spilling out. At this point, we're literally in like worm territory. Like we're slipping over the worms. So I think it could be really cool. And I think with PCG, it is actually relatively simple to just scatter ice and like snow meshes or whatever you want to do on top of other meshes. Depends on how much time you're still willing to invest in this, right? And I think with the water in the front, if you pick a couple of spots that are not turbulent, could probably get away with them too. Or if you're concerned about seeing too much of the ice shader, what you could do is literally just put them in the back somewhere, right? Like not in the back, but like middle ground, so that you can't really see the shader. Oh yeah, you're using dash. Yeah. That's good. Kind of feeling like the Northwest Passage song. Yeah. Oh, I was listening to that song. I basically had that song on repeat from oh, what are they called again? Dang it, now I need to look this up. Northwest Passage from Unleash the Archers. Such a good song. Or such a good interpretation of the song. Oh. So good. Kowalinsky is saying it could be cool to add a SAM boat. Is that a specific kind of boat? Or oh, like a small boat. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Kowalinsky. You corrected yourself afterwards. Jesus Christ. I need to continue reading. Yeah, like a small boat on the sea. That could be interesting. It could be interesting. I wonder. Yeah. That could be interesting. Just an indication, right? It's not a bad idea. Nice one. Thank you, Adam, for sharing your work. This is coming along nicely. Looks like a fun little project, though. Just like chipping away at it. Kind of itching to do mine soon. Let's see. Yeah, little project. They never are little, huh? There's one on the left. I didn't even see it. Okay, yeah, if I didn't even see it, then yeah, would be cool to kind of accentuate it more. Maybe through fog or maybe some, I don't know, lighting or whatever you want to do there. It'd be cool. A quick one from Leo. Leo had a couple of questions here. So Leo's making a stylized house. Two questions here, really. So the first question is basically the top image, and it is it okay to have some parts of my environment to be clipping inside of other parts, like the chimney on the roof and the round part of the house? Is that on the left? How do you guys resolve that? So you only need to resolve it if you're ever going to go inside of it. If you don't go inside of it, it doesn't matter. The only thing that you then need to sell is that the transition here, like basically how the roof is manufactured, that makes it, right? But if you're never going to go inside of it, then I would honestly, yeah, not bother making it. Well, if you're not going inside or see inside, right? So yeah, it's basically not doing it. And there are ways around it, right? Because like even if you have like a shader that is see-through on the window, you can kind of just cheat your way through it by making like a fake interior, or it doesn't have to be really complex. You can just put something in the window. So that's going to be fine. If you want to make it 100% correct, then you will just have to like boolean the shape right? So basically you take this shape and then you say, hey, cut everything that intersects with this shape from this shape, right? So that would be like a quick way, like a quick and rudimentary way of making sure that nothing intersects, like a Boolean operation. You could use that. Now, for the second question, is there anything that you would improve on the scale and the shape and the proportions? I'm kind of feeling lost and I almost dropped this project. Please, guys, help me. Okay, first of all, concerning the little statement there, if you're in Blockout and you're already thinking about dropping it, that is tiny red flags. So keep that in mind. When it comes to the shape and the proportions, when it comes to these houses, like it's really about, especially if you want to hit that like stylized look, right? You really want to make it, you really need to exaggerate some of the shapes. So what is happening here is that you can see, for example, the roof, it's not straight. It has like a really nice silhouette, right? Where you just want to like emulate that as well and feel like something to exaggerate even more, right? So like this is not going to be straight. This is going to go like up. It's going to be really chunky. And then this guy is going to have like a side curve to it as well. And then this guy is going to have a side curve. And the way that you do all that is by using soft selection. So, oh my God, how do you spell this? I'll just add a question mark here. Exaggerate, you know? I'm not a native English speaker. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Slate, how dare you? The first thing you say, just laughing at me? Oh my God, savage. So exaggerate your shapes. Do that with soft selection. Have fun modeling it. Because that is going to make the base house look like way better. When it comes to the proportions, I think most of them are actually like all right. It's just, yeah, the exaggeration, right? That is really the thing that is missing here. Yeah. Exactly. See, coming here laughing at me and then you didn't have to Google it yourself. Oh my God. Oh, thanks for doing that. Connor B is saying, so just from a roof design perspective, we would have a shed out between the round roof and the arch roof. Currently, you have what we in the industry call a swimming pool roof. Oh yeah, because all the water collects here, right? Yeah, because you kind of want to do a connection here. Oh my God, in my pen. Kind of want to do a connection here so that at least, how's this gonna work? Like water kind of streams down, right? Yeah. But also it's fantasy, you know? So if this dwarf or whoever lives here is going to end up with like a leaking roof, like our fantasy construction work is not going to care about that, you know? But that is interesting to know, though. It is always interesting to know. Cool. Thank you, Leo. And thank you, Connor, for saying that as well. That's awesome. It's not up to code, Tim. Get out of here. We have enough rules already. Come on. I do love that, though. I do love that. Next up, Yudar. Let's have a look. Medieval Mansion. Number 1. Vines are not looking fluffy enough. What is the solution here? You were saying that you wanted to get them from Fab and Quixel and place the vine by hand. Because now, using the vine tool from the Dash add-on. Also, it looks like ass. Straight up. Like, this doesn't look like Ivy at all, right? And I think it becomes time to just make your own little clusters that you can have. Sorry, Q. I know sometimes I get so potty mouth. But I don't think it's necessarily up to you, right? Like it comes down to like the tools that we kind of use for the job. And I think a spline tool, which what I'm assuming that Dash is using, that is just not the best way of getting like really good looking dense ivy. I think the best way that you can do that is just, it's gonna be annoying, but just making models yourself and then exporting them as like little clusters that you can just like smash together, right? So what we usually do is, let's say for this guy, right? Like let's break it down really quickly. We have like a corner cluster, right? And then we have like a straight cluster, and then you just have like, I don't know, a smaller patch. And let's say we have like a longer patch as well. And now we made ourselves a nice modular kit. A nice modular kit that we can use across like the whole thing. Right, so we can just keep using that, like play around with the scale, the rotation, the density. We have like complete freedom, and you can make it look like really, really nice. And the benefit of that is let's say you want to make it even more dense, you just go back to your modeling program, and then we can just add more polish to it, right? Or just duplicate all the leaves or whatever. Sorry, second language. No, it's all good. By cluster, do you mean planes with a leaf texture on them, right? Yeah, so with cluster, I'm actually talking about, let me explain. Let me make it really clear. So the way that I would build this is you have your texture atlas, right? And then it has like all your leaves. Then let's say like some vines on there as well, right? So nice. And then what we basically just have to do is we cut that out into like smaller pieces, and then we can kind of reconstruct like a whole layer of ivy. And then we have like some vines coming from the bottom, from the top, you know? And that allows us to then make this asset, right? So, and this is what I mean in this case with a cluster, right? So this is, I'll probably don't say cluster. This is going to be like one of your assets. But it's a cluster because just the ivy is kind of packed together, right? So that's why I refer to them as clusters. But that's the way that I would build them. That's the way that I've always built my ivy and like any small foliage, is I have the asset first, or like I have the atlas first, and then I have the complete freedom to like make whatever I want based on that atlas. Nice. Cool, and that gives you all the flexibility that you need. I do have to say, I do like the updates to like all the texture work and also just the environment work, right? Like we're getting little sections that start to make sense in isolation, which is really good, right? So great job there. Yeah, I would try to make them yourself or adjust stuff that you already have. Maybe that you're using with Dash, right? Because even if you're gonna get like some external assets, you're still gonna, in the best case, you're still gonna have to compile them yourself, right? I mean, you could look for options. Might be that Quixel has like some cool asset packs for Ivy. I'm assuming they do. So yeah. Oh, but the big thing that I wanted to say there is the reason why I hammer on making it yourself is because it is the main focal point. That's the main reason why I would recommend you actually make it yourself. Because I don't really care if you make these trees yourself or not, because they're in the background, right? But at least I want to see you do everything when it comes to the building itself. Right. Next up, we go to the composition. I'm thinking to add more guiding lines to increase that feeling. Maybe paint the ground according to these lines and foliage. I am not sure what you're trying to do here, because normally what happens is I think you're trying to draw like the, I don't even know the name of it, like the golden ratio, I guess, right? The golden ratio kind of just goes from here to here, right? Like that's sort of like the golden ratio, what's happening. Because you can't really just like draw lines and then hope that it makes sense, if you know what I mean. What I would do first and foremost is I would first and foremost like offset your focal point using the rule of thirds, right? So you split your canvas into like 3 equal parts, horizontally and vertically, and then you pick one of those areas to make your main focal point. So that would mean, like in this case, let's say this, we're gonna remove all of this, and we're just gonna, no, we might actually do the opposite, because you do spend like a lot of time here. So we might actually do something where you just see this area, right? So this is the area that's going to be cut. Right. But what I think is more important is that there's a couple of ways that we can look at this, right? So first of all, most of the colors are relatively muted, and they kind of fall into like the same color spectrum, right? So that's what we're seeing here. There's no real contrasting point. What I kind of want to see is where your focal point kind of stands out more, right? So that would be a good thing to try out first. For example, we go back to your inspiration. Let me open this piece up from Angelina. Let me get that in here. So if we were to look at this again, right, and we were to blur it, which is a good way to just see what is in the focal point, but like where the attention is gonna go to, right? My blur, Gaussian blur. That might be a bit too strong, but like you can definitely tell that she was like very deliberate with like how to use contrast, right? Because we definitely see that like there is like a brighter spot here, right? And then the rest of it is especially like darker. Like these areas are very dark in comparison. And that is like an effective way of guiding the view to somewhere, right? So that's the same thing that you need to try to achieve as well. So if we were to try that, I mean, I'll leave that to you. So that would be something to give a try. To just focus the attention more towards an area where you want the attention to be focused towards, right? One last thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is from like a logical perspective of the scene, is this is going to sound so ridiculous. Where does water go? And it might sound like a really dumb question, but it is so fundamental to building environment art that I even underestimated like how important it was going to be. The flow of water dictates a lot of stuff in our worlds. So the reason why I bring this up is Very simple. You have these areas in the back, right? Where you added like puddles of water on the outside of the road. Right? But if you think about a road, if we have our road from a top-down perspective, you have tracks, right? That's where most of the weight is going to be. So that means that these two sections are going to be the deepest, right? So that's where all the water collects, right? So the water kind of collects where like the roads or like the car is going to be driving, right? So that would be like these areas. And then also think about this, like why is this puddle here? Because this terrain feels like pretty flat, right? We need to give, if there's water there, we also need to slump down the terrain a little bit to have like a puddle or like a little bit of an offset there too. And this is once you start using them in conjunction and you start building that logic into your world, this is sounding so ridiculous, but it creates cohesion, right? That is what we're so used to looking at all the time, that is subconscious to us. And you can use that in so many beautiful ways, because right now what is happening is that this doesn't really look like a road at this point. It kind of just feels like a random collection of puddles and water, and it doesn't even feel like a road. I bet you that once you start moving the puddles in the middle and then you have the road tracks and all that kind of stuff, it will look like a road because it's immediately recognizable. Hey, thank you for the sub, Cody. Appreciate it. Cool. But that was it. That was my spiel. So yeah. Really think about the composition. I think with the composition, it comes down to a lot of factors. Really play around with the lighting. Really think about like how to direct the player's attention, right? Your ideas when it comes to leading lines and maybe doing something with decals and all that kind of stuff. That could be really cool. Be really cool. Vitautas Catharsis has an analysis on similar plans on ArtStation. Let's have a look. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we're talking about here. On plants? Maybe there's a delay on the stream as well. Oh, are we talking about... Oh, I see. Are we talking about the ivy? Talking about this thing. Yeah. Stuff is cool. Stuff is cool. I'll add it into the feedback as well so you can have a look. And I'll share the link with people in the chat too. Yeah. Let's go to share the link. There we go. Cool. Next up, thank you so much for sharing the work, Qtar. Next up, we're gonna go to Megval. Gonna keep it moving. Let's see. I try to keep the noise more balanced and intentional, keeping some of the areas clean. Oh yeah, so no worries, Q. So I had a look at this, and it is really hard for me to give feedback on this because I'm missing context, right? It's a thing that we talked about before where I don't know how big these shapes are. I don't know how big the cracks are. I don't know where we are in the scene. I don't know how you're going to use them. So it's kind of really difficult for me, honestly, to give any feedback. Because I basically want to avoid a thing that we had in the beginning, right? Where I was giving a lot of feedback, and then the next session I was like, oh, these are way bigger than I imagined them to be. And then my feedback would have been different, right? So next time it would be really good to just have the scene. Even if it's at least like, hey, look, I'm just going to throw this rock in really quickly, and then you can see it in context, right? Because now I don't really have a clue how big this is going to be. Like, I even noted it down, like, this could be the scale or this could be the scale, right? So let's see. How are the noise levels in this situation? Is it too clean? You currently read as cliffs, going to add cracks and some additional fracturing too. Well, yeah, so this is very... Yeah, but even saying like 8 meters tall, like it's very hard. Like, okay, I'm not a mathematician, right? Like, I'm an artist. I love to see the shit in visually, right? Because that is honestly the only thing that matters when it comes to scene building, because it is also gonna be our measuring stick that we can use to be like, oh yeah, this feels good because now we've built something with it, and then we can kind of look at like the whole thing, right? Because if these are, let's see, yeah, because these are the kit pieces that we discussed last week, right? Which is awesome. But a kit can only be seen in totality. Like, it can't be really seen in like individuality, right? And even if we move away from rocks in general, this is the thing that I say with a modular kit, like, you keep it as low fidelity as possible, and then you just try it out. You just throw it in the engine, play around with it, because that's the only thing that matters. Because even let's say like these look really good, once we start like playing around with them, they might not feel as good anymore for whatever reason, right? So it's a long way of saying, try to get to the end context as quickly as you can, like the end use case, right? I'm gonna be saying I like the noise on that corner slice. I don't know why, but it's satisfying. This one here, right? That corner slice? Or this one? Because yeah, I mean, it do look good. Number 4, this one. Thanks, Connor. Yeah. It do look really good. It's just, I can't really give any accurate feedback, right? So apologies for that. So we're gonna keep moving. Let's see. Oh wait, let's see. Because you did say something about the randomness, right? Like the randomness that you were generating before. Yeah, I think having more control over that and finding a different way to get like more noise into it is a good idea, right? So you could even do it like as an additional decal on top of it or something like that, where you just have like lots of noise coming in, or as a module that is specifically built around noise, right? Like we discussed last time. I think that's a good way of thinking. Next one up is, we'll do Evelyn. No worries, I'll put them in the scene next week. Kind of rushed it a bit this week. Yeah, no worries. I know it can happen. But yeah, give me some context next week and then we'll talk about it in depth. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing your work nonetheless, McFall. Like, it's always lovely to see consistency, you know? Being here almost like every week. Cool to see it. Right. You'll 3D print them and stand next to them. What, do you have like a 10 meter tall like 3D printer? Fuck. That would be awesome, actually. Just print like 10 meter blocks. I could just print a house at that point. Might as well. Let's see. I've been working on this prop on and off for a while, and I'm pretty happy with how it's looking. I'd love to hear some feedback concerning the texturing and just the overall look. Might be exaggerated. Slate, get out. Get out of here. Cool. So my first thought on this, Evelyn, was you had this little mock-up, right? Because you want to do like a bit more to the presentation of the scene, and you were kind of doing like, I'm gonna do a corner and then have like a fade out near the edges, right? Which is cool, but I think wouldn't it make more sense to have it like on a table somewhere? Because that almost feels like that is going to be the place where it's at, right? Because if we're gonna put it in the corner, it kind of feels like it's just very unnatural that it's there. You could potentially do it on a table in a corner, potentially, or just have like a table in the middle of the room, and then you could still have like the black background, right? Like it's not. I don't think it's 100% necessary to have a full background, but just giving it a little bit more context, either through like a table or I don't know, a chair or whatever you want to do. That additional context is usually going to be enough, right? So yeah, I think that would be cool. Then, let's see, what did I do here? So, number 2, like the second part of the feedback here was the vibrancy, more contrast, and pushing, especially like the shininess of the metal. You can see that like this is what you posted, right? But I kind of had the feeling that it felt like very muted. It felt very safe. And what I tried to do was kind of just exaggerate it more and make it more attention grabbing, right? So you can kind of see like the before and after, where the version that I tried to do was I really tried to push like the gold around the edges and just make sure that like all the highlights were kind of like really nicely pop in, right? So you can kind of see that. And it pops out. Whatever this is, it feels bigger than it should be, but it looks great. Yeah, I think that's the purpose of this prop, right? Where it feels like very chunky, but it does look really nice. Here's the concept as well. So yeah, just exaggerating it, right? This is also gonna be great when you want to actually like capture attention on ArtStation, right? That is always going to be helpful. Like I'll give away a free tip. I do like a separate, I will push like a separate saturation and contrast and sharpening and whatever on my thumbnail to just have it capture the attention even better than the main prop. So I'll do like a separate render that I just do for the thumbnail. Even if it's the same camera, right? I just do like a separate post-processing on it. You can even still do that here as well. Evelyn is saying, good idea about the table. It did feel quite unnatural on the floor. Yeah, I think so too. And I know what you were trying to do, right? And it's not that it's a bad thing. It just felt like that's not the context that it would normally be in. So even you could still have it in the corner, on the table, whatever you want to do. Just, yeah. Making sure that it's contextually right. It's looking really nice though. I really like it. And then, yeah. Like, honestly, most of the stuff that I did was all just like post-processing, right? Because I feel like that's what it needed. And like just really getting that shininess to look really good. What you can also do, or can try, is actually trying some like bloom, like very subtle bloom. So you get like nice little glint around some of the edges. That would be cool. Yeah. This is looking awesome though. Great work. Yeah. Maybe emissive elixirs. Yeah, I mean, oh, this is actually something that we tried. We talked about it in private, right? Like, the bottles, like doing something with like a Fresnel node, like making the glass on the bottles like extra shiny, just so that it feels like glass. Because now it almost feels like, wait, actually the concept, right? Like that kind of shine. Kind of want that. You will probably have to do some kind of shader trickery. I think. Oh, what was it called again? You have to go into your material and set it to. There is a setting where you can basically have like ray trace reflections, and I think you can set it to like, oh dang it, forgot what the name was. But you will definitely need to go into like your material properties and make sure that it's just like super shiny. Super shiny, because that is going to look really good. Yeah, I think it's going to be nice. Cool. Yeah, I mean, oh, it would be so nice if you can get that to look exactly like the concept, right? A thin layer opacity. So it might be that. I don't think you would necessarily want that for this. I was thinking more. So there is a way that you can set like your reflections, like, because in the beginning, like the way that the material is set up by default is that the way that it handles reflections is actually like very low res, but you can set that to like be pixel forward or something like that, and then it actually captures the reflections way better, and that usually helps a lot with creating like reflective materials. Let's see, is this double-sided as well? So it has like an interior and an exterior. I think that's good. Yeah. I'll see, I do some research. Yeah, I'll need to look into it. I might send you something afterwards as well. Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering, because then you get like a glint on like both the interior and exterior. Here we go. Aikidoka, any Blender tutorials or courses you recommend? For Blender specifically? Not really. I mean, the donut tutorial, if you're really at the beginning, is pretty good to get you up and running with Blender. But any other specific ones? Not really, unfortunately. Yeah. Thanks, Odin, for sharing your work. Best of luck, and yeah, looking forward to next week's update. All right, 3 more left. Let's see. Joe, for feedback, I was wondering how you would approach, how you would break down the tech parts to make it more modular. I'm planning on pipe ventilation kit, but I'm not sure how the smaller elements could be made in an efficient way. And for the cables, I'm assuming a spline would be the best option. Or environment art tutorials or environment art courses. There's probably like a bunch of really good ones online. The one that a lot of people seem to be really enjoying is the one from Thiago Klafke. But that is more if you're into stylized work, right? So if that is up your alley, that will be a good one that I can recommend, because I've seen some really good stuff come out of that. Yeah. That's probably the one recommendation that I have, like straight at the bat. CGMA does some good courses as well. So, yeah. That will be a place to check out too. Joe, let's have a look. So we're talking about like how you would break down the tech parts to make them more modular, right? First, what I would do there. Thiago Klafke. Let me share a link. Environment Art Mastery course. Let me see. Let me share it in the chat. Where's the chat? There we go. That's the one that I was talking about. Feel free to check that out. Cool. So let's break this down. So first of all, to wonder what you need to break down all the tech parts, we just need to do a block out, right? because we need to know what do we need to make. Right, so we're definitely going to have pipes, we're going to have ventilation, all that kind of stuff. But if we have a kit that we can play around with and that's going to be really flexible, that is going to be number one, right? We need to know what we're going to make. And then after that, we can decide like how we want to split that up, right? Like you said, you're going to need cables, you're going to need pipes. For that stuff, I wouldn't necessarily use splines because splines get really finicky, especially in Unreal. What I do is I set up my splines in Blender and then... Oh wait, actually, is that a good way of doing that here in this case? Okay, so for the cables, I would do it in Blender. I would have that on a spline and then you just export that as like a mesh, right? For the pipes, you would have to do that in Unreal, right? Because even though it's a little bit annoying, I would still just make it a modular kit and then just have like a bunch of different pipes and give you like a bit of flexibility by just making like different sets, right? Because I just find splines quite tricky. Yeah, unless you use like a tool or something like that. But yeah, so cable is Blender splines. Pipes is UE, Unreal Engine kit, right? And then anything else is just unique or just cobbled together with tidables, right? Tidables or decals or whatever you want to do. Tileblus. Tile. Jesus Christ. Tile. Oh my god. Unique or tileables, whatever you want to do. Like basically anything that's bigger than pipes and cables, like I would make that unique or whatever workflow you're using, right? Like weighted normals workflow, like UVs, whatever you're using there. That's the way that I would build it up. Yeah, but you're specifically asking for the smaller elements, right? The cables, I find cables so satisfying to do. What I would do is, because cables are really, I find them really fun to make unique, right? So what I would do is, once you've got like your sort of final representation of the building, I would grab whatever's in your scene, export that as a single mesh, and then use that single mesh as a reference in Blender to just draw like a bunch of splines and just build basically like an intricate looking like wiring system. You could also use PCG. I was actually looking into some of those tools as well, and it seems like they heavily simplified the system where, okay, bear with me. I'm going to give like a really high level overview, right? So feel free to look up like tutorials yourself, but there seems to be a way that you can set up, what are they called again? They're not snapping points, but basically you can go into your asset and you can make like a little locator on your asset, and you can tag that with a certain name. What you can then do is you can tell PCG to look for anything with that name and then draw a spline between those two things. So what happens is that you could probably end up with like a really intricate looking system where you can just have like modules that you move around, and once they get into a certain distance of each other, it draws a connection with a spline between them. That makes for like a really flexible system. Obviously, if you just want to make like one street corner, I would go for the more unique look and just do it in Blender. If you want to build more than that, that could be a good way to do it. Yeah. I mean, splines are also an okay option. It's just my personal preference is that they get really finicky, especially because they fuck up when you want to go straight up. Like they tend to twist a lot. And especially with a building like this, you're going to go up a lot. So that is going to be pretty annoying in this case. Yeah, hope that was helpful, Joe. And thank you for sharing your work. It's going to be cool to see it all come together. Doing a bunch of cool tech stuff. Or Houdini, not biased. Yeah, thanks, McFell. I feel like the learning curve is a little bit steep on Houdini, you know? When I can just slap a couple of nodes together in PCG now? Come on. I'll leave Houdini to the wizards, you know? Next up is Dylan. Dylan, where you are? Underground Shrine. Okay, so I'm mainly looking for feedback on composition and scale. Cool. I think this first shot is great, honestly. I do really like it. It is looking really cool. Yeah. I don't really have too much to say on like the scale and the composition. It's a very straightforward composition. Nothing bad with that, right? It is a simple, and this is not gonna sound like, I don't want to sound like punching down or anything like that, right? It is a simple scene which allows you to focus on the quality of the scene, which is beautiful. I would love to see more scenes like this where they really focus on like high quality detail rather than making it look like really expansive or whatever. This scene already has the bones of like being like a good manageable scene. I love it. So that's looking really good. Yeah, I mean, this is the killer shot, right? The rest of it is just like, maybe this one could have like a bit of additional flavor. This one feels like a throwaway composition at the moment. Like, I don't know why we're focusing on a handrail, right? And this is also a case where I don't think you need to have additional screenshots if they don't really add anything to the scene, right? It's totally fine to have that one really good looking screenshot, like that really good looking angle, and that's it, right? And then you just do like your breakdowns or whatever underneath. So yeah, focus on the killer shot. Got something good on your hands here. It's looking nice. It is also based on a concept by Otto Candera, called Pray Time, which is looking really nice. I'm curious to see your spin on this, because I'm assuming that you're gonna spin it more in the stylized realm, so that's gonna be interesting to see. Yeah, not really anything to add here. I think it's already looking good. The only thing that I would say is about like these other screenshots, right? Like this one, love it. This one, maybe. This one, nah. I feel like I'm a teacher, you know? Like a teacher writing on your homework. Great stuff. You get like a, oh my god, like a star. Yeah, great stuff, Dylan. Not too much to add there. Looking like a really solid basis for the project. I love it. It's beginner friendly. No. Yeah, that's what I've heard everyone say. Ugh. Craney is asking, sorry to bother you, but do stylized environments require a different pipeline or skill set than making realistic ones? They require a different approach, and they might require like a different pipeline depending on what you're going to do with it, right? Oftentimes, the biggest deviation is that if you do stylized work, you will probably end up sculpting more than in a realistic pipeline. That is the biggest difference, honestly. Yeah. In terms of like pipeline and skill set, right? That's the biggest difference that I can immediately call out. But for the most part, like materials, you can still make them in Substance Designer. You're still modeling in Blender. You know, like most of that stuff stays the same. I think sculpting is probably the biggest differentiator between the two. And we got Camilla, last one for today. Hello, BE. I'm currently polishing some piece of environments I made during my graduation game project this year. Cool. My questions are, what do you think of the colors in the scene? Oh, Falco, that's a good question. We're going to dive into that in a bit. So, what do you think of the colors of the scene? For the palette, I based myself on reference to the living room. You can see it in the files that I sent. Oh, that's this one over here. So add that in really quickly. Okay, so you based yourself on these colors. Cool. I decided to replace the orange by a more reddish color. I always try to respect the 60, 30, 10 rules when it comes to doing my environment. But still, but I think I still have a job to make that work. The biggest difference to me immediately is just the saturation of the colors, right? That is the biggest thing that we can see here. Where it's almost like you need to really push like the saturation of the colors. So interesting though, not all the colors, because for example, the wood is still like very dark, right? But let's see. I'm gonna move this up here for a second. This one is not gonna be included here. Oh, I was color correcting. Oh my god, I was color correcting the image too. Oh my god. So dumb sometimes, so silly. Okay, let's do that again. Let's give that another try. Oh, that's priceless. Okay, let's see. There's still a difference in there though. So let's have a look. Yeah, it does feel like we're kicking up the saturation a bit more. And we're getting like an overall like warmish tone to the whole thing, right? This is where it's going to be really important to decide what your materials are going to be, right? Because your materials in Lumen, they're going to be really important. Because the global illumination, the lighting with Lumen plays onto it, right? So paying attention to like something like your biggest surface, like the color of the walls, right? Is going to make a big impact on the scene too. Yeah, I think it's a cool reference. I think what you will need to do is you will need to give this a try in post-processing as well, because it feels like some colors are more pushed, like the warmer tones are pushed more than the green tones, right? So it almost feels like they're kind of doing, I don't know if we can kind of replicate the effect here. Does this come with like, no, this doesn't come with like presets. Let's have a look. Because it's almost doing something like this, right? Where we push the vibrancy up, but then it kind of has still like a very muted kind of green color that goes on top of the whole thing, right? Compared to like what is happening here. So we went from this to this. Yeah. That would be post-processing, right? For the most part. Hi, Nima. Are the feedback only for Discord community members, or can other people ask for it too? No, so this is exclusively for Discord community members, as we have a lot of people now. So, yeah, feel free to jump into the community if you want. There's a link in the description down below. If you can, of course. Let's see. So the second question is how to enhance the lighting. I think starting with post-processing a little bit more, I think what we want to do is if you want to enhance the lighting, it's the same thing that we've done like a couple times before in this session, right? So I'm not going to go too much into it, but we can probably push the highlights. This just depends on where you want to go, right? Because this old school look is a bit more specific in what we can do with it. And I mean that in a way where it probably doesn't have a lot of contrast, right? So let's see. Like, it's not as contrasty as you potentially would expect. So that doesn't mean we're probably not going to be pushing the shadows too much, but we can still punch the highlights up, right? And then we kind of end up with a situation like this, where we still put the focus more here, just enhancing what was already there, right? Yeah, so I think... Did I hear Nacho? Yeah. He always goes nuts outside. Freaking scared me though. Little rascal. Let's see. And then this is going to be a portfolio piece. How can I take it to the next level? I mean, that's a pretty broad question. I mean, think about for me, it would be storytelling first, right? In this case, so storytelling first, like really try to tell like this, the story behind like this electrician, and also who he is, right? Like why is he trying to build it? Like, what's his motive? Like, what happens there, right? Like, who's behind it? And then the second thing for this is asset and material quality. I know we're keeping it very generic, but yeah, that's what I would focus on. So storytelling and then asset and material quality for this scene, especially because, yeah, a lot of it here in the focal point is going to be very heavy on like materials, right? So getting the most out of those is going to be very, very important. Cool. Hoping that was helpful, Kimmy. And thank you so much for posting your work. Let's switch it on over. And let's talk about this last question before we head on to sleep time. So Falco was asking, for you, Timothy, is it harder to make stylized or realistic environments? If you're talking about myself, my personal thing, like it's always been difficult for me to make stylized stuff because I just don't really want to, right? So it's never been my forte. It's never something that I'm interested in. I kind of have like this weird... I also don't really aim for like hyper-realism, right? I don't want to get to like this, oh my god, it needs to look better and more realistic. Like I don't have like the hyper-realism thing. But I kind of straddle between... The best way that I can describe my style is probably more towards like traditional paintings. Like that's my spin on it, right? Like that's sort of the best way that I can describe my own style, even though it's not consciously that I'm doing it, right? That's just what I gravitate towards. I I think in general though, like if you're talking in general, it's always more difficult to do stylized compared to realistic. Because realistic is relatively easy to get like a sort of a benchmark for, right? So let's imagine, oh, you want to figure out how to make this can? Cool. I have the can right here, right? I just need to make it. Like, obviously, it's not easy in like execution because you need to pay attention to like all the details and like you need to go really in depth. But if you just want to be like, oh, hey, I want to make something stylized. What do I do? Right? You can do, I don't know, like you can do a Zelda stylized, you can do like Ghibli stylized, you can do this kind of stylized. So there's a whole spectrum of it, right? And even if you try to isolate it to like, I don't know, let's say, oh, I'm really inspired by this game, let's say Overwatch, right? Like how do you then distill that into something that you can replicate? And that by itself becomes like a technique that you have to like refine and really think about and try to replicate and all that kind of stuff, right? You can just do solid colors, yeah. Like that is literally flat colors is like a style, right? And some games do it like really effectively. Like they do really, really good stuff with it. I think, isn't Journey like mostly flat colors? I mean, they do some like shader trickery and they have like materials and all that kind of stuff, but most of that game is just like flat colors, right? Abzu, it's probably all just gradients. So like when it comes to the range that you can do when it comes to stylized, it's like there's so many choices that are involved. Whereas like we go back to realism, if I want to replicate this can, these are the dimensions. This is a texture. This is what needs to be on it, right? Like this is the material response. Like there's an accurate thing that we can look at to try and replicate. Where it comes to stylized, it's so broad and so varied. And what I think, this is at least my view on it, that realism is always pushing the bar forward, right? So like we're still chasing like, hey, we want to get as realistic as we can. And anything that doesn't pass that bar for the current hardware capabilities, right? Because we're still chasing that dream of like, we want to have like a one-to-one replication with real life, right? That's the chase that we're doing with realistic graphics, right? Like especially hyperrealism. Anything that basically gets left behind in that chase becomes stylized at a certain point. Because I remember as a kid, like I thought that like the first Tomb Raider games were like realistic, right? Because that was the best thing that like graphics could do. So that was realism. But now it's not. Now that game is stylized, right? Even though nothing changed, the game didn't change. It's just our perceptions and our influences changed, right? The world around it changed. Like the Witcher 4 tech demo, so beautiful. Yeah. Oh yeah, the stuff that we do in games now, and just like the sheer amount of talent and time and dedication and intelligence and oh my god, like the amount of brain power that goes into like creating a game or even a silly tech demo, right? It's astounding. Like looking at like all the tech that gets done just so that people can play like a smooth game. It's freaking crazy. Any franchise you really want to work on? No. I think this is one of the lessons that everyone will learn. It's not really about the games to work on, because as soon as you work on that game, it loses all its charm that you were chasing in the first place, right? So let's say I love Fallout, right? I've always loved Fallout. Like I love the worlds that they build. Fallout 4, probably the game that I spent like the most time on. I would not want to work on it because that would destroy like the way that I see that game. So I have this like separation that's happening there where anything that I really, really would want to work on, I should not work on. Because also there's a thing that happens where once you start working on it, it's just a job, right? Like, I know for a lot of people that sounds like weird because like you still want to get in and you're still chasing that dream and you got the rose tinted goggles on, but it is a job at the end. So yeah, the realism just sets in there where like anything that you work on, especially think about this, right? So we'll pick I don't know if there's any people in here that have been working for like multiple years to get into the industry. There are people right now working on a game that have spent more time than you tried getting into the industry, working on that single game. What do you think kind of an effect that has on like just that perception of the game that you worked on, right? Sure, there's like lots of love in that relationship as well, right? Like it's like you're nurturing it and you're seeing it grow over time, but there's also lots of just like hard decisions and just painful decisions, especially as an artist, involved in that process too, right? So yeah, it's not all rainbows and sunshine. So yeah, it's I mean, I feel like I always give like roundabout answers to this, but hey, that's what you get with me, I guess. Yeah, I think what I really want to do, is build my own world. And that hasn't changed from the beginning, right? Like I drew in my sketchbook because I wanted to build my own thing. I think that's where I'm going towards. And that's going to take a long time. A long time. But I'm slowly but surely building up towards that. And who knows? Maybe we'll get there. Maybe we don't. We'll see. But yeah, thank you so much for all the questions, people. I loved having this chat. A lot of really good questions. Oh, let's finish it off this with this last question from Craney. Expecting an announcement for that next year? I mean, look, you heard me talking about like material functions and all that kind of stuff in the beginning, right? Like that is like the fundamental groundwork for something like that, right? So who knows? When making a 3D portfolio, do you think having original works is better than making a 3D interpretation based on other people's work to show how good you are transferring 2D knowledge to 3D? Both have their place. So I have always built my own stuff. I've never really done anything from a concept because that is just a thing that I love to do, right? I don't really want to do like someone else's work necessarily. Hey, thank you so much, Slate. That is awesome. That might be the first ever like super chat that we've ever had, so that's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. But yeah, that is just my interpretation of it, right? Like I just always wanted to do my own thing. So I don't think there's anything bad in recreating someone else's work because you're 100% right. That is what we do in the industry as well, right? Usually you get concept art and then you translate that into 3D. So that is the way. That is the way that it usually works in the industry as well. So there's nothing bad with it. Like either thing works. Honestly, what I would focus on is whatever inspires you the most. Probably follow that. The first investment into your game, hell yeah, that goes into the investment fund. Last question for tonight then. So Mackie is saying, I'm a level designer who also really likes to create a nice looking environment with my levels I create. Any thoughts on whether to focus on level design or the art side? So that's a very personal decision to make. I would say that is yeah, that is something that you have to figure out for yourself, I think. And I think you can do one professionally while also doing the other one as a hobby, right? Good luck on the studio launch. No, Connor, no, don't say them. Don't say that word. But yeah, I can't make that decision for you, unfortunately. I would definitely say focus on the one that you love the most and keep the other one as a hobby. And then potentially what might happen in the future is that you could then switch it up, right? You could then be like, hey, look, I've done this art thing, because I've seen so many people, like my friends, do the same thing where they were like, hey, I want to become an artist, and then they get the artist job, and then they get like really inspired to do like level design or game design or programming or whatever, and then over time they make a switch, right? And that makes them such a powerful person to have on the team, because now they not only have like knowledge from programming, but they also have knowledge about this other thing, right? So I tried to do the same thing when it came to level design. I was very close with like the level designer that I was working on Far Cry, for example, and I learned a lot, right? So yeah, like that can only strengthen your skill set. But I think in the beginning, what you need to do if you want to get into it, then I would definitely focus on one. Get in. You're saying I guess I'm more skilled in level design. I'm wondering if there's potential for hybrid positions, or are they both very separated? In AAA, they're super separated. You don't really get to do a lot of crossover between most of it. I have done some level design myself, and I will probably do more of that in the future as well. Like, but I don't think it's ever going to be a thing where I'm going to do 50-50. You know, it's more a thing where it's when the need of the project is there and level design is currently occupied with a bunch of other stuff, right? Then I'll jump in and do a little bit of level design to support them. But that's about it. And I can imagine that the same sometimes happens on the other side as well. Like they do like a little bit of set dressing, you know, to help out. Yeah. Great questions. Thank you so much all for being here. And thank you so much, Slade, for the donation that goes straight into the game fund. So appreciate it all. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole bunch of like cool content that we have here on our YouTube. Go check it all out. Like there's probably something at your heart's content. And yeah, if you want to join, feel free to just check it out in the description down below. If not, I'll see you next week, because yeah, I'll be back then. Lovely to see you all, and have a nice evening. Bye-bye. Mech Falco to make it into a battle pass system. Oh no, don't do this.